What is up guys, it's Zero here, and today I have for you my first deck profile for the set 19, I think we're set 19 decks, and it is the witches. I forgot they were called for a second, but they are definitely not nearly as good as I initially thought they were. I'll start with that. I initially did think they were better than Revengers, but after playing with Revengers for like a good, weekish, I definitely have changed my mind on that. I think Revengers are definitely way better than Witches, but that doesn't take anything away from Witches themselves. I think the deck is still perfectly serviceable, perfectly fine, perfectly playable deck, and it's definitely a deck that I do have fun with when I do play around with it. So, without further ado, here is the deck list. Give it a sec, and here it is. This is the list that I play. The first of all, yes, I think this is the best game for this deck. But aside from that, for the actual cards, the starter, we are playing the Witch starter. I have no idea what her name is. Just like with most of the cards, she's cute, but I don't know her name. But the important thing is her skill. So she is one of the starters that have resist, as with most of the Legion starters that don't do anything to your Vanguards and Legion. Those do have resist. But her actual skills, when the attack that this unit boosted hits a Vanguard, if you were in Legion, you may put her into Soul and you randomly call 2 of the 4 cards. I don't know. Okay, they're shown here. Alright, so 3 of the cards are 5k vanilla bricks. 1 of the cards is a on play that has a skill. On play, it's 4k. This one's 4k. On play, if your Vanguard is a witch and your opponent has 2 or more grade 0 cards, you can soul charge 1 and counter charge 1. So, unfortunately, this card is random. So, more often than not, you will not get the counter charger and you'll just get 2 5k bricks. But those are still fodder at the end of the day to use to stack for skills and stuff. So, not the worst thing you can play. The starter is kind of honestly pretty meh if you don't hit the flipper, but it is okay enough that you'll play it. It has resist, so that's really nice. It's witch, so you can use that stack fodder. If you really were against playing this starter, you could play Goat if you really wanted to. I think this is still better. And Goat also costs a counterblast, which this deck is very counterblast heavy, so I don't think. So that's one of the reasons I'm not playing the Goat. So I do think this is probably the best starter for the deck. Not amazing, but you work with what you have. At worst, it's stack fodder. Next up, start with PGs first. We're playing the Maclear. The Revenger Maclear, which the PG play doesn't actually matter. Although in my list it does matter because I am playing Mordred, and Mordred is a break card. You don't get counterblast denied or limit break denied. So I think the new PG for my version of this is much better than the old PG play. If you weren't playing the break rides, which I think you should be, you could play the old PG if you wanted to. Next up, a very old card back in set Foreshadows, the Arianad. So if you didn't know, she actually has witch in her name. This right here is what you look for, these 2 words right here. But if you're on global and you're seeing this, you can just read the cards yourself and it'll say witch. Although, funny thing is, there's a card, the Gold Paladin card, the Black Mane Witch. Her English name has witch in it, but her Japanese name does not have these two words in it. So she technically does not count as a witch. So I don't know how global is gonna handle that. So, but that's just some fun facts right there. That Black Mane Witch isn't actually a witch. But regardless, her skill is Vanguard Rear, tap herself to drop a card, draw a card. So yeah, this is like the Gojo clone, the Lean clone, whatever you want to call this card. It's the tap self to drop draw. Pretty good in Legion deck. Help you feel lets you get rid of the triggers in your hand into draw to Legion them back. So yeah, pretty good. And she's on name too, so she's also stack fodder. Next up is I have no idea what her name is, but her skill is, importantly she is a witch. Her skill is on play if your Vanguard's a witch. You can CB2 to make your opponent call a grade 3 or higher card from their drop zone to the board over a card. You choose where this goes, but the grade 3 that's called is completely random. And then you call it onto a board over a unit, and then the grade 3 becomes a card that has no effect. It's 5k, and it's a grade 0. So this is the whole gimmick of witches, is that they call grade 0s onto the board. Since there are no grade 0s in this game and your triggers are grade 3s, you just turn the grade 3s into triggers. When they leave the board, they become normal again. So no like screwing a card out of effects permanently. So yeah, this card, as far as I'm concerned, basically reads CV2, clear intercept a lot of the times. What this card does. So yeah, it's pretty good. The best thing about this card compared to the other cards that call out of the deck is that because it's out of drop, you can never whiff on this card. Some cards that call from deck can actually whiff. You don't find grade 3 off the top, which is rare but can happen. So yeah, the fact that this card is guaranteed is nuts. And yeah, but also important thing is that she's which name. This card's okay. You really don't have much better to play, so you just play 4 of this card, and 1 filler. The 1 filler I chose to play is I don't know her name, but she is a filter on play. If your opponent has 2 or more grade 0s, you can drop a card, draw a card. I don't think there's anything else better to play in this lot. This card is like basically never a filter, but it's just it's a filler one for a reason. It doesn't really matter what you play. It's not, to me, as long as the grade 1 is on name, it's good enough. So yeah, that's why I play this card for 1 of. And that's it for the grade 1s. On to grade 2. The 2 most important grade 2s in the deck just happen to not be from the new set. This, in my opinion, is the most important grade 2 in this set, in the deck, the Curse Lancer. So, you know what he does by now? His skill is Vanguard Rear on hit countercharge 1. This deck is very counterblast heavy. You want to use multiple skills that cost counterblast. You want to use your domains, you want to use your Fianas, you want to use your Riazes, you want to use your grade 1, all those cards counterblast. Lancer helps you refund that counterblast. So yeah, I think this card is like a mandatory 4, no questions asked. Just you will cut anything that's like but the Lancer. The Lancer is way too important to actually play a 4 in my opinion. And then another 4 of is another card, the Skull Witch in the main. So yeah, you don't know, she's also a witch. So she is also at worst sack fodder, but her skill, if you don't know by now, on play, CV1, to discard a card to draw 2 cards. And the last skill, just reminder text saying that if your hand is 0 cards, you cannot use your skill. So she is a double, she does like everything this deck wants. She is at worst sack fodder. She pluses you, because this deck does not plus outside of this card. That is the biggest issue with this deck, that you do not inherently plus like at all. This card is your only form of plus, and this, but it's still a pretty good plus, and she lets you drop cards into drop zone to Legion back later. So yeah, very, very good card. I don't think I would play less than 4 of this card either. But if you were very paranoid only playing 2 Legion mains, I would cut a main before I cut a Curse Lancer. So if you want to play a 3rd copy of Riaz's main, I would cut a main before the Lancer. But these are just I like, so these are just not playing. Next up is the I really don't know her name either, but she is the Witch 12k attacker. So if your Vanguard's a Witch, during your turn, your Vanguard's a Witch, she has plus 3k, we can 12k. More often than not, she's not a 12k because you ride in Mordred. You want to ride Mordred first in this deck, but when she is a 12k, it's cool, I guess. That's about it. But yeah, more importantly, you play her because she's the mate to the Fiana, to your main ride. So that's why we're kind of forced to play her. And you play her, more copies of this than the other mate, because Fiana is a more important ride than the Riaz, in my opinion. So that's why I should play the ring too. For all intents and purposes, these cards are just here to be mates. And then the other card is, I also do not know her name, but her skill is the same as the grade 1. On play, if your Vanguard is a Witch, you can CV2 to call a random grade 3 from your opponent's drop zone onto the board over a card. You choose which unit you want to call over, and then it becomes a 5k brick, 5k vanilla brick. Yeah, so grade 0 5k vanilla brick there. And then you play her as a mate. She can clear an intercept for you, but she's mostly there just to be a mate. And that's it for the grade 2. So onwards to the grade 3. The actual most important grade 3 in my opinion is the Mordred. So Mordred is not a witch, very clearly. Don't look like a witch to me, but that's the point. He is, you don't know what he does, his skill is Break Ride, Break Ride plus 10k, and then random upon you call a grade 2 or lower, any grade 2 or lower card from your deck, and give 5k. So he is not restricted to calling only Revengers. He can call anything, so that is why this card is very good, and it is, in my opinion, actually needed for this deck to function a lot of times. I'll get into that right after I talk about the second skill, which is the when attacking Vanguard plus 3k. So scaled any 7k booster is always good to have. Alright, so the reason I choose to play Mordred in this deck is because Legioning early with Fiana or Riaz basically makes it so that you get to do like one or two slightly explosive plays at most. More so if you ride the Fiana over the Riaz is kind of whatever, honestly speaking, but if you just go hard ride Fiana first, you like clear the front row, you push probably 2 damage, maybe 3, because your lanes aren't really scaling. You do your thing, you pull their triggers out of their deck, cool, and then you just don't have a follow-up play after that because you have no counterblast, and you probably don't, and you're not plussing that much either. Mordred fixes a lot of problems in the deck. It's a free plus. It can the main target for this card is the Cursed Lancer, so to give yourself a follow-up play on the next turn, and it scales your lanes when you're aggroing. So yeah, this card honestly solves a lot of the problems that this deck has, and I do think he should be played in the deck because again, early Legions, this deck just ends up making you waste all your counterblast, and you just sit there doing nothing to the end of the game. You die. You just bend over and die. At least with Mordred, you sit there doing nothing, but once you actually get to break ride, you do like usually what ends up happening is you end up your opponent's probably like 3, sometimes 4. You push, you clear the front row, you take a trigger out of the deck, you push them, you survive their turn, and then you like re-ride the Fiona or you re-ride a Riaz, and then pop the front row again and go in for a kill that turn like that. So this is a very like 2-turn kill kind of deck. At least that's how I end up playing it. So yeah, that's why I think Mordred really helps the deck. He fixes 3 major flaws of the deck. It scales your lanes, it's a free plus, and it sets up a follow-up play afterwards. Yeah. So that's enough about the best card in the deck. Unfortunately, the best card in the deck isn't even a witch, but that's besides the point. Next up is the Fiona, the actual boss of the deck, but really, honestly, it's Mordred. So, Legion with 12k attacker, and her skill is on Legion, which is really whack. Why it's on Legion? Why I don't know why they didn't choose to make this like, if you're in Legion, you can do the skill, but that's besides the point. On Legion, CB3, sack off any witch card to check the top 10 cards of your opponent's deck. Choose 2 grade 3s among them at random and call them to a rearguard circle on your opponent's side of the field over a card. So you can't I don't think you can't call the empty circle. You have to call over a card. So more often than not, you do this to call over intercepts, and then the grade 3s end up becoming 5k bricks. So yeah. One way to look at this card is just this card is a Draconic Overlord. That is probably the best way to look at it. CB3 clear the front row, but it does have extra utilities beating it. You can kill back row off of this card if you really need to, but more often than not, if you get your game plan off of using Mordred first, you will buff the front row, assuming it's 2 intercepts of course, go face 3 times, and then try to follow up this again with a rewrite. So yeah, the best finisher in the deck. It's okay. Taking triggers out of the deck is good because triggers when you gain, and there's no triggers in your opponent's deck. They can't sack triggers when you gains, right? So yeah, they are pretty good, but the biggest thing is these costs are very overcosted in my opinion. But I do understand why games did this. They didn't want witches to be like stupid broken or anything, because if this stuff was really cheap, you just keep ripping triggers out of your opponent's deck and they just don't have triggers in the deck anymore. So yeah. But that's the point. This card's okay. Your main break ride target is your main finisher too, so yeah. And our second skill is once per turn, if your opponent has 2 or more grade 0s on the board, you can sack off a card the same name as a card on your Vanguard circle to draw 2. So if you're first off, this skill basically doesn't work unless you use the first skill, because at most you have the starter on the board. More often, if you're, I guess if you use one of the other skills to put grade 0 on the board, that could work too, but starters usually leave the board, and if you use 2 skills to get 0s on the board, you don't have counterblast to do an actual follow-up play, so this skill basically only works after you've used this skill. So yeah. But it can come up other times, but that's usually how I find I'm using the time for this card skill. You can draw 2. So if you're not in Legion, you can only sack off yourself. If you are in Legion, you can sack off an extra copies of Fiona or the extra copies of the Mate, which I have done before to draw 2 cards. I hate the fact that this skill costs 2 or more grade 0s to use, but draw 2 is always nice. It's like you trade 1 card to draw 2. It's basically like a Neme without the counterblast, but more restrictive when you can get rid of less cost. Yeah, pretty okay card. Nothing else to say, but this is still the main finisher of the deck. So yeah. Next off is the Riaz, the other Legion. So Legion is the other grade 2 that I don't remember the name of. But her skill is on Legion, you neg 5k to your opponent's Vanguard. If they have 2 or more grade 0s on the board, you neg 10k instead. So this card, this is okay, I guess. Question marks? No, this first skill is cool. It lowers powers with either skill. That's about all this card does. And then the second skill is once per turn, CB2, sack off a witch to check the top 5 cards of your opponent's deck, randomly choose a grade 3 from among them, call over a card, and then from the 5K break. So yeah, it is like the drop zone skills, but from the deck instead. The thing here though is gotta keep in mind this card can whiff. If you whiff, you essentially did CB2 shuffle their deck for them. That has happened to me before, so sometimes you have to do this to try to end the game, and if you whiff, you're very sad, because you wasted 2 counterblasts to shuffle their deck and probably give them triggers out of their deck now. So yeah. This card is the heal for a reason. This is like the last thing you want to ride into. This is something you want to ride into if you like only have 2 counterblasts left, so yeah. Nothing else to say with Riaz, it's kind of whatever. You play it because she's a witch and she has the put a grade 3 on the board skill. The last grade 3 is the one of is the Fodla, I think is her name. On play, ignore the fact that it's Vanguard skill because you never want to ride this card. On play, CB1 to choose to call 2 of the 4 cards. These cards are the same cards as the starters, as the cards the starters can call, but the difference here is that this card you can selectively choose which cards to call here. So this card basically reads CB1 get 2 pieces of fodder on the board, and then if your opponent already has grade 0s, it's CB0 get 2 fodders on the board. So it's okay effect, not terrible, not amazing. Keep in mind that this card calls a stand. I forgot to mention earlier, the starter calls the grade 0s as rest, not a stand. This card calls them a stand, ain't selective. So this is what the starter wishes it was, but unfortunately it is not. This is the one mainly because it's on name and it can call more fodder for you. So yeah, this is the deck. I implore you guys to play around with ratios and stuff, and all that. I definitely do think the Mordred is needed, and Lancer and the main are core to the deck. So yeah, like and subscribe, all the good stuff. The game for you guys after this as per usual, and I will see you guys next time. Peace out.